This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Now you're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. I'm joined by the Connacht Tribune's John McIntyre to look ahead to the Senior Hurling Championship on this evening's show. John, going on round one, obviously Clarenbridge were the big performers there in round one. It does set it up nicely now in some of these groups that looking ahead at the weekend.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think, the big surprise of the opening round was Clarenbridge's victory over Turlough. I don't think the fact that Clarenbridge won that game was a major surprise because before the game you'd be saying there wouldn't be a lot between those two teams, Paul. But I suppose it was the score they assembled, 5 goals and 21 points, and Turlough only got a late goal as a consolation effort. And Clarenbridge really hurled well. Evan Nyland shooting the lights out as usual. Josh O'Brien played very well at midfield, scored, I think, 2 goals from there. You had Evan Nyland's brother, Aaron, finally getting a consistent run of games after his serious hamstring injury. And, the bridge had been knocking around, Paul, for the past 2 or 3 years and without reaching the Holy Grail. So I think those setbacks or disappointments have probably steeled them, and they're a bit more battle hardened. They're still a relatively young team, and you'd expect them to progress deep into the championship.
Do you feel this is one of the most open championships, John, in a long while? You consider obviously Thomas's are coming again. There's no doubt about that. Clarenbridge performance, you expect the reaction from Turlough and Loughrea are obviously going to be there. And then if you throw in the likes of Capitagle's run last year and or more, it does feel like it's the most open in a long while.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, Paul. Obviously, St. Thomas's did the six in a row, a fantastic achievement for them. The Coonies and the Burks, I mean, their level of consistency is astounding. The hunger, the want, the desire to keep coming back year after year. And I've written it in the Connacht Tribune on a few occasions. I'm not quite sure that team has got the universal credit that it deserves to win 6 county championships in a row in the modern era in Galway, in one of the most competitive county hurling championships around, is some achievement. And I know that when they were knocked out in last year's title race, the perception was that will probably be the finish of them as serious title contenders. But if we are to take their first round performance against Gort at face value, I just thought that was a statement of intent, more or less saying we haven't gone away. And you go back, last year they had a very successful All Ireland club campaign that's demanding mentally and physically. And obviously that would have taken its toll. They're not robots. So they're coming into the 2025 championship, Paul, a much fresher team, rejuvenated. And there's nothing like losing that you've had for a long time to whet the appetite. And these fellas didn't win six county championships and 2 All Ireland club titles unless they were an exceptional group of players. Now, obviously, the personnel has changed since their first All Ireland club title victory back in 2012, but their achievements over the past decade and beyond have been astounding. And I think the team that beat St. Thomas's this year is going to go a long way. And certainly the former Kingpins are back with a vengeance. Look, nobody's going to get carried away by by one performance, but it's almost as if St. Thomas has said to themselves, "We really want to test ourselves here. Do we still have it at this level?" I know Gort were compromised by losing Greg Lally to a red card. That made St. Thomas's job easier. But overall, it was still a very impressive performance in the first round of the championship by them.
Are they favourites for you at the minute, John?
Pardon?
Are Thomas's favourites for you, or who would you be tipping at this present
Um,
moment in time?
no, I think you'd have to see. Obviously, they're one of the main contenders. I think Loughrea found out in their game against Kilkenarn. On paper, you're thinking to yourself, this could turn ugly for Kilkenarn, even though it was a local derby. But Loughrea now have to get used to their changed circumstances. They've been hunting that county title for the last 10 or 15 years. And now that they've got it, they have become the hunted. And that's a different, place to be in. Motivation, suddenly you have to find different levels of it. Because you're not going out, well, we were determined to win our county title this year. They've done that. So it's a question of whether they can back it up. Obviously, the represented Galway very well in the All Ireland Club campaign. We're lucky to lose the All Ireland semi final. But this is a new hunt. They basically have to start all over again. They have a target on their back. Now, obviously, they were a little bit rusty against Kilkenny. They weren't at full strength. And in fairness to Kilkenny, they had a crack at them. They were missing some key players, but they've promoted some of the younger generation, and it certainly worked out well for them on the day.
Just before we get into each game, John, I probably should have mentioned at the start of the show, but Gavin Keary appointed as the new Galway under 20 hurling manager. He's built quite an impressive CV, obviously working with the Dublin senior hurling team, the Clare senior hurling team, and he's been a key part of what Loughrea have done over the last few years. It just seems like a great appointment, really.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, Paul, he has a huge level of experience. When I was involved with Loughrea back in 98 and 99, Gavin would have been a young player on that team. And you always got the impression from him that he was thinking about the game. He just wasn't going out to play a match without having done his homework mentally. And I'd say he's tactically astute and aware. He's built up an impressive CV. And I think the fact that Galway haven't won an under 21 All Ireland or under 20 All Ireland title for over 15 years, and the minors have been struggling of late. It's a good opportunity for him to establish, the way he wants to manage the team, the type of player he's looking for, the way they're going to play the game. And he's been elected. I think it's for a 2-year term with a prospect of a third season. And for years there, I was questioning the value of Galway winning all these All Ireland minor hurling titles. But since that well has run dry, you begin to realise it's better to be winning them than not to be competitive in those championships. And we've seen that with Tipperary this year, winning the All Ireland senior hurling title looked as though they've come from nowhere. But when you drill down, they've been winning minor and under 20 titles over the past 4 or 5 years, and that stood to them. But Kerry is a good appointment. He'll probably have a strong backroom team with him. I think his predecessor, Fergal Healy, was a little bit unlucky both at minor and under 20 level. Fergal put a huge effort into that and just didn't really work out for him in terms of results. So, in the context that Gavin isn't taking over an under 20 team that has been winning all around him, I just think it gives him a little bit more space to stamp his personality on it. I'm not saying Galway are going to win the under 20 title next year or anything like that, but you'd expect him to be extremely competitive under Kerry.
Absolutely, and I'd like to wish him best of luck in
Mm.
the new role there. Um, John, if we get into the games at the weekend, we'll look at Group 4 first because there's no point in saying otherwise. It's one of the group of deaths, Group 4 and Group 3, you'd probably say. But county finalists last year, Capitagal obviously got the draw first day out against Tommy Larkins. They're coming into this one against Ormore Mary, who caused a surprise against Sarsfields. A lot at stake here for Capitagan now if they weren't to get a result and a chance for or more Mary to back up their first round result as well.
Yeah, you've set the scene perfectly, Paul. Look at Capitagal. They've been knocking on the door for the past 7 or 8 years. They had a major difficulty in getting over the semi-finals, and they finally cracked the code last year. And they brought a huge crowd to the county final in Kenny Park against their neighbours Loughrea, and they made Loughrea work really hard. That match went down to the wire, and the the question now, and you often see it with a lot of first-time finalists, that that could be the peak, and a lot of them don't get back to that stage again. And I'd say Capitagle will be a little bit disappointed that there were 2 points up on Tommy Larkins, in stoppage time in the opening round, and they didn't close the deal. Now that's a tribute to the Woodford lads as well, that they salvaged the situation. So look, at the bottom line is a draw is better any day than losing, and this is a competitive group. And Ormore Mary turned the tables on Sarsfields in the opening round. They're a developing young team. Rory Burke is a good score getter. They had goals that day by from Dermot Hannafy and Ryan O'Connell and Ryan O'Donnell. And Ormore, I believe, were one of the coming teams in the championship. And it's going to we'll have a better indication after this match against Capitagle how far they will go in the title race. Capitagle, they're a seasoned outfit now at this stage, and Jarlath Mannion and Liam Collins, they're a handful up front. And this is a hard game to call now, and I wouldn't be surprised what way it went, to be honest about it.
Do you think when it comes to this group, is it just about finding a way through it? If you take it back to the groups last year, Captagal just found a way through it against Moylough last year, and we seen they gradually got better as the championship went on.
Yeah, but it's kind of difficult to flick on a switch and flick it off when you want to. The bottom line is there's no county title for you if you don't come out of the group. And um, even though there's a lack of jeopardy the way Galway runs their senior hurling championship with three teams coming out of each section. For instance, my own county now, my own club, Loughrea, we're battling for survival on Saturday night against Drummond Inch and Jordan because only two teams come out of the group. We were beaten by the mid champions, JK Brackens, in the opening round. And if we lose on Saturday evening with Lockmore Castleiney to come, it's possible we'll be plunged into a relegation battle. But Galway, and I understand why they have three teams coming out of each group. Club players now with the split season, Paul. When I was hurling and managing, you started training almost in December, and you really, worked hard on the training ground, building up the endurance and the fitness through the months of January and February, and you're kind of peaking then or getting ready or near peak for the opening round of the county championship in late April or May. But now club players have to wait till August, and that's 8 months, and that's a long time to keep the show on the road. And the big responsibility on team managements now is to have their players peaking at the right time of the year. Like nobody can be going mad training hard in January and February because you're peaking for a championship that in April that isn't taking place. And so, but having said that about all the lack of jeopardy in Galway, and again, just to develop the point about the Galway Hurling Committee, I feel that when you're waiting 8 months for championship hurling and you're potentially out, if it's only two teams coming out of each group, you could be gone out of the championship after two 60 minutes hours of hurling. And that seems very unfair to me. Whereas this is probably a more democratic way of giving club players extra games and also ensuring that the best teams are still standing coming towards the end of the championship. Now, having said all that, we're in a situation this weekend where Sarsfields are battling for their lives. Uh,
Mm.
Ormore beat them first day out by a point, but with Capitagle and Tommy Larkins drawing, it means that if Tommy Larkins beats Sarsfields this weekend and Capitagle get a result against Ormore, it means Sarsfields are out of the championship, regardless of what happens in their concluding game. And for a club like them, and I have been involved with them in with them in the past, they are a really proud club. They take their hurling very seriously. That would be a shocking scenario for them. So against that background, Paul, there's huge pressure on Sarsfields in this game against Tommy Larkins, and you would expect that the likes of the Coonies and Darren Morrissey are going to pull out all the stops to get them over the line. But the Larkins are a nice team, maybe a little bit physically lightweight. They've Kevin McHugo there, they've Jason Flynn, they have the Murphys, and I mean, they have a bogey team in Clarenbridge, but they're not playing Clarenbridge this weekend, and they'll want to build on their performance against Capitagal. And this is I think this is one of the games of the weekend. There's no question about that. And there'll be no holding back. There'll be no shadow boxing. It's only the second round of the championship, but the stakes are huge, especially for Sarsfields. And if they lose, the consequences are dire for them. It's given that we assume that Capitagal will probably get the better of Oranmore, although that's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination.
Alex Kinnear's been a big loss for Sarsfields, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. There's no question about that. I saw Sarsfields a couple of times last year. He's one of their go-to players, and the reality, Paul, about county championships up and down the country is that over time, it's the urban clubs who probably are going to dominate down the road because they have the bigger picks. I know our own lads at home in Loughrea, we're struggling to have 15, 16, 17, 18 players of a senior standard. And it's just like we're an archetypal rural parish. There's a lot of those parishes in Galway as well. You see what's happening in Kiltormer, an Ireland club title, many county championships. When I came to Galway first, they were the brand leaders, and now they're amalgamated with Moylough at underage level, and they're miles away from being a senior club again. So it just shows you that's the way the dynamics are out there. And I know Sarsfields maybe have a bigger population than Laura, for instance, my own club, but at the same time, there is pressure there. And if you're losing one of your key players, it does make the job a good bit harder. And Kinnear is definitely a loss for Sarsfields this weekend if he's not recovered from injury.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Could we see Dan Nevin possibly for Capitagal too? This weekend he's obviously named on their panel.
Hmm.
This year away last year too, and even a player like Donald Mannion picked up a nasty injury last year. You mentioned about Capitagal and Larkins, it's a hard one to call, but how do you see that one going?
Um, I won't be surprised what way it breaks. I believe or more having beaten Sarsfields, that will have done wonders for their belief to take down one of the traditional powers in Galway. And I still think, Capitagal, they're a dependable group. They give everything that they have. They're a very hard team to beat. Um, and from an experience point of view, I'd give a narrow vote to Capitagal, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ormore Mary's forward momentum continued either.
Just on the other game, John, you talked about how it's do or die for Sarsfields, but a massive incentive too for Larkins this weekend.
Yeah, that's true. And if Larkins do the business against Sarsfields, they've wrapped up their place in the knockout stages. And I think the longer the year drags on, though, it's more of an inconvenience to Tommy Larkins. They're not as strong a physical team as others out there. And I think a dry sod, a fast moving game really suits them. They have good stickmen, good hurlers, a fair bit of experience now as well. And but look, they're not going to be thinking about what's going to happen in mid-October for the moment. Their priority is to come out of what is a very tough group, and getting those two late points against Capitagal to forge a draw. I think is significant in the context of how their year will evolve. There's no soft centre there. They're hardy, and I think that result will give them a good bit of belief heading into this weekend's game against Sarsfields. But you'd expect, given the Sarsfield's predicament, Paul, and the consequences of defeat, that that they will just pull out enough to get over this challenge.
Looking at Group 3 then, another group of death you could say, John. Cashel and Turlockmore, Saturday evening, 6:30 in Kenny Park. Cashel not overly impressive considering the bodies Ardrahan were down in that round one, but got the
Mm.
job done. And I think everyone's fascinated now to see the reaction and is there much switches in this Turlockmore team after that performance against Clarenbridge.
Yeah, we're talking here about two of the traditional powerhouses of Galway club hurling, and it's incredible to think that it's 40 years since Turlockmore won a county championship. And you have to go back to 1984 for Castlegar, who still lead the Roll of Honour, which reflects how much the club had dominated the county championship up to 1984. And both clubs are craving to get the county cup back into their parish. Uh, I had an involvement with Castlegar. It must be, God, it's going on 10, 12 years ago. And they're, I don't know. I think history is weighing on their shoulders a little bit, the deeds of the past, and I don't think it's helping the current crop of current generation of players and previous generations of players. They're being judged by the highest of standards. Castlegar, were such a dominant force in Galway club hurling. And they probably had teams bet back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, even before they left the dressing room. Such was the psychological advantage they held over a lot of the teams in the county. But having said all that, look at they had a fierce, important win over Ardrahan in the first round. It mightn't have been pretty. Greg Thomas got the crucial goal. Ger Faher, who is now, geez, he must be in his mid 40s, and what a man! I mean, um, people were saying he was nearly finished about 10 years ago, and he's still doing it. His free taking is still outstanding. He still picks off the odd one from play, and he still, which is a tribute to him. And maybe it's a reflection, though, on the other hand, of the lack of real quality talent in the parish, that somebody in their mid 40s is still one of the fulcrums of the team. And they've lost Oisin Connolly for this season, and but they will be delighted that have got over Ardrahan, even an injury hit Ardrahan, because Castlegar had lost them the last two championships. Um, but with Turlock, and I've been writing about it in this week's paper, they're kind of on the brink. That defeat to Clarenbridge will have really shaken them. Of course, the illness to Sean Lennon on the week of the game obviously was very untimely and a big blow to them. They gambled with playing Dahi Burke up in the forward line. I'd have my doubts if they would persist with that.
Do you think he'll
Um,
revert this weekend?
well, look, I don't know what Darren O'Shaughnessy and Brian Holland's thinking on it is, but in fairness to them, you'd have to understand why they did it, because, you know, for years we've been hearing about Turlockmore to have a plethora of defenders and the lack of cutting edge up front. So they were shaking up their team to see if they could get it better balanced and carry a bigger threat at the opposition end. And in fairness to them, they scored 126. But the problem was the hemorrhage scores at the back. Conceding 521 is an awful score. Now, I do know in modern day hurling, we saw Asperfone, I think, geez, they nearly scored 40 points against Portumna.
Yeah.
And back in the 60s and 70s, 40 points is nearly win you three matches, never mind one. So this is a huge game for Turlock, because if they lose at the weekend, it means they're facing a match against Ardrahan to stay in the championship. And that's not something that would be appealing because Ardrahan have their fair share of injury problems. Michael Walsh, Earl Italian, players like that. Fahy is out as well. And they're probably going to gradually filter back as the championship continues. So, but you'd expect, again, like Sarsfield's, Turlough they've been knocking on the door to a county title breakthrough over the past 4 or 5 years. And you'd expect them to come through this one, Paul.
Yeah, you would think so that there has to be a reaction from Turlough Moore. Do you still think Turlough Moore can win the championship this year?
I'd say from the outside looking in, that defeat against Clarenbridge, you just wonder, is it altering the pecking order of the major contenders for the Galway hurling title? Um, I would have perceived Turlough Moore, for instance, ahead of Clarenbridge in terms of which teams would challenge for the county title. Now you'd have to say again, taking that result at face value, that Clarenbridge have jumped ahead of Turlough Moore. But look at, as we saw, Paul, in this year's Munster Hurling Championship, like Cork being destroyed by Limerick by 16 points in the round robin series, and 3 weeks later, drawing with Cork in the Munster final and winning it on penalties. So form is so variable now, and nothing surprises me anymore, to be truthful about it. And I do know, you know, I go back to the All Ireland hurling final, and it's probably crept into the mindset a little bit. Cork players were probably fed up with beating Tipperary. And when you're in that environment, you're thinking to yourself, no matter what Tip do on Sunday, we're still going to beat them because we have their number. And in the opposition to the dressing room, you had a Tipperary team that was fed up with being beaten by Cork. So that would have helped them to produce that second half performance that turned the All Ireland final on its head. I mean, when I reflect back on it, to think that Cork only scored 2 points in the second half for such a free scoring forward line up to then, and Tipperary to score, you know, 3-12, 3-14. It's just, even though I was up there and I saw it happening, you're still kind of scratching. Are we really seeing what's happening here? So, for instance, if I suppose my point is if Turlough were to get at Clarenbridge in the county semi-final later in the year, all bets are off because they're the team with the motivation. They'll be trying to restore a bit of pride for what happened to them in the first round. Turlough are wobbling, but they're still there, and I would expect them to be still standing after this game at the weekend against Castlegar. I just feel while Castlegar, it was an important win psychologically for them. It almost guarantees their passage into the next round of the knockout stages of the championship. I just don't think they have the all-round quality to trouble the series title contenders down the road.
Yeah, and Conor Walsh's born for Turlough is a big positive too for
Well,
them.
I felt a bit sorry for him.
Mm,
Imagine scoring 16 points and walking off the field and you've been beaten by 6 or 7.
yeah.
I mean, 16 points is an incredible total. But then that's what's happening. Ger Farr scored a lot for Castlegar. Tom Monaghan hit 7 points from play for Crockwell. Adrian Prendergast also scored 7 points in Crockwell's first round win. So this is the scoring, the individual scoring feats that's happening out there, Paul, on a regular basis. But it is frustrating, though, that you know, to even get 16 pucks of a ball in a match or even 2 matches, I think is an achievement some days. But to actually split the post on 16 occasions, I know a lot of them came from placed balls. I'll tell you, it's only when you don't have a reliable free taker that you really appreciate a good one.
It's interesting then in the other game on Sunday in Group 3, Clarenbridge, Ardrahan, quarter past 2. For Clarenbridge now, it's about can we back this performance up? There's expectation now, and everyone will look on with that when they look at Clarenbridge. Ardrahan and for Francis O'Connor, it's obviously try and get some of the bodies that they didn't have back, but if not, try and get another good performance out of his players here.
Yeah, well, no, Clarenbridge do have a few injury problems. Phelan McCann and Shane Ryan, I believe, are out. And I think there's a question mark about Christy Bannon as well. Look, at Clarenbridge have some beautiful players. I mean, the Nyland brothers are classy stickmen. Gavin Lee, he's still a very young player, and he was asked to fill a very demanding role for Galway in this year's championship by Micheál Donoghue. And most days he vindicated the management's faith in him. He's a terrific stickman as well. Look, they have a lot of talent. They have Joshua Ryan there, who's a potential more regular Galway senior down the road. They've had great success at underage level over the years, but it's getting close to the time now when Clarenbridge are really challenging strongly for a third county title, and they will be boosted by that performance against Turlough. And I think on all known form, they would be expected to beat Ardrahan. The clubs aren't that far apart. It's a South Galway derby. I think this is the fifth successive championship that they have met in, Paul, and Clarenbridge have won the previous four, and I also expect them to win at the weekend.
Yeah, for Ardrahan, obviously, those injuries, as we talked about, they're obviously really tough injuries to deal with, and it'll be interesting to see can Francis O'Connor get them back. But will it be a challenge too to lift the players? Like they did have opportunities to snatch something late on too in that game against Castlegar.
Yeah, well, I understand that Jason Kennedy and Ben O'Connor might be back for this game, but Derek Fahey, Keane Walsh, Michael Walsh, Irlatanian, I believe, it may take a few more weeks for any of them to feature. And again, Ardrahan, a former strong power in Galway, I think they have 11 county championships and they're second in the roll of honour behind Castlegar. They have fallen on lean times as well. And there was a period there in the late 80s and 90s where, and even this decade, where they weren't really mapped as serious contenders. I think Sil Dolan, the former Galway player and Clare player, has helped to turn around their fortunes. He's no longer manager. I think Ardrahan maybe were a little bit behind the curve in buying into the modern training regimes that clubs are doing. But definitely there has been signs of progress over the past 3 or 4 years. They're a bit more competitive at underage level as well. But this is a big ask for them, especially after losing to Castlegar. They had chances to draw that game, didn't take them, and I think that's going to come back to haunt them. I will be surprised if Ardrahan get anything from this game, but because they've lost their first game, they're going to throw everything at the fixture. They've no choice.
Exactly, and John, just looking at Group Two, Saturday evening in Kilbacon, Craughwell, Kilkenarn, 5 o'clock. Kilkenarn probably one of the performers of round one when you consider how close they were to Loughrea. Craughwell get the job done against Clonmerdale, and if Craughwell are to get another win, they're obviously going to be qualified at the weekend, and then it'll be a good position for them to go in the final game against Loughrea if they can come out on top this weekend.
Yeah, that's true. Kilkenarn, um, you know, their performance against Loughrea was very laudable. One of their young players, Eamon McGlynn, I think, on his debut, scored 4 points from play. And Ian McGlynn is a rock solid club player. They're obviously to have a good few of their players have been featuring on Galway minor teams over the past 2 or 3 years. That's a very encouraging sign. Obviously, their time at senior level uh, for them to peak is not around the corner or anything close to it. But it just shows, though, that Kilkenarn are working hard with their minors and under 20s, and that there's a future there for the club. And even allowing for the fact that Loughrea mightn't have been revved up to the last, and probably the assumption was no matter what Kilkenarn throw at them, that Loughrea are still going to beat them. It was still a heartening effort all round. And they won't be afraid of Crockwell. But can they muzzle Tom Monaghan? It wasn't a great year for the Galway senior hurlers in 2025, and but Tom Monaghan, had some big games in the maroon jersey, and he's very dynamic at club level. Scoring 7 points from play first day out. I don't care who you're playing against, scoring that amount from play is still a fair achievement. I saw Adrian Prendergast a couple of years ago playing against Castlegar under lights in Ballinasloe, and I thought he had the makings of a player who might hack it at inter-county level. And the reports are that he was quite impressive for Crockwell in their opening round win over Clymer Daly. And Crockwell need players like him, to really step up to the plate. The under Stephen Glennon, they got to a county final a few years ago, were arguably unlucky to lose the replay. Their form dipped off. Few players retired. The Healy's were gone, who were key men for them, Niall and Fergal. But I think they're rebuilding a bit again, and I even see their second team is competitive at
Mm.
intermediate level. Actually, beat Abbey Knockmy first time out. So that's encouraging for the club. And having beaten Clymer Daly, who are kind of a middle of the road team, not too bad and not too good, but you'd expect Crockwell to drive on against Kilkenarn this weekend.
Yeah, and Kieran Lean's another player that has
Yeah,
come
he's a
into
nice
the
young player
Cromwell.
now. I've seen him playing at underage level. And, clubs should never be afraid to run with the youth, because until you play them, you don't know how they're going to measure up. And I think as all players learn as they advance through their careers, and I did personally as well, obviously, when you hit your mid 30s, the legs start slowing up even before that. And hurling now is all about pace and the ability to run and stay running and run hard. And that's what young players give you. Physically, they may struggle in a match which is where the exchanges are high intensity. But at this time of the year, young players, there's a bit of a swagger about them. They don't know what it's all about. They don't have the nerves that older players have, because they know what's at stake. And, so Kilkenarn and Crockwell, they're obviously going with the youth to some extent, especially Kilkenarn, and that's a good thing to see.
Looking at the other game then in Group 2, Duggan Park, 6:15 on Sunday evening, Clymer Daly, Loughrea. Obviously, Loughrea down a few bodies in that first game. They had no Shane O'Brien, no Paul Hubban, Anthony Burns only fit enough to come off the bench. But big positives for Loughrea to see Jamie Ryan and Martin McManus obviously starting. They had a difficult year through injury last year.
Yeah, McManus did his cruciate, and Jamie Ryan suffered a horrendous hand injury in against Antrim up in Casement Park. And I don't think any of us realised at the time how serious it was going to be. And he was only coming on as a sub for Loughrea in the latter stages of the county championship in 2024. So the fact those two guys are back, you need forwards to win championships, and both Jamie Ryan and McManus are certainly well equipped to make a scoring impact for Loughrea as the championship evolves. And they got a bit of a scare against Kilkenarn. You'd imagine that will have shaken any complacency out of their ranks, and they will have too much for Clymer Daly. Éanna Ryan has retired. Now they do have Brian Burke back. Darren Daly, I think, scored 7 points the first day against Crockwell, which was a fair achievement as well. But Loughrea just have too much quality for Clymer Daly. Every now and again, Clymer Daly produce a performance that takes down a big gun, but I don't think it's going to be this weekend.
For Loughrea, obviously you mentioned it there early on. Do you see it as a challenge? Obviously, everyone's going to be trying to hunt them down as championship, as county champions. But When you look at the squad overall, and I know they had two or three out the last day, but there's nothing long term like last year. It definitely does feel like they're stronger this year than last year.
Yeah, well, you have the Clean brothers, you have Shane Morgan. Um, they're going to be a year older, a year wiser, a year stronger. You have Ian Hanrahan there. There's lots of quality in the ranks. Johnny Cohen is still manning the full back position, and Paul Hooban is a dogged defender. They have a lot of talent, and it's just about Tommy Kelly and his management getting them back to the place that they were in 2024. And I remember when I was Galway manager, we brought in Eddie O'Sullivan, the former Irish rugby head coach, to talk to the lads. And he was saying, if you stay the same and you do the things that won you something last year, you will get worse because this thing is constantly evolving. And so, what worked for Tommy Kelly and his management and the Loughrea club last year may not be as successful in 2025. So they're going to have to come up with maybe a couple of new tricks in that because, as I said earlier, they have a target on their back. They're the champions. They're the team everybody else wants to take down because I know myself as a player back in 1986, I think Laura played Lee, who were the reigning All Ireland club champions in an R-Tip semi-final, and we beat them. Sure, we were on the moon for about 10 days afterwards. It was just to beat any champion. It's still a special achievement. And how Loughrea cope with the changing dynamics around them will be interesting to see. And they got a wake up call against Kilkenarn. I know they won the game in the end by 4 or 5 points, but if they were playing Kilkenarn last year, you'd imagine that they'd beaten them by 10 or 12 points. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Loughrea, their level of form as the year progresses. I mean, when you look at the great Galway club teams over the last 30, 40 years, Kiltormer, Sarsfields, Athenry, Portumna, St. Thomas's teams that kept coming back year after year winning the county title. Um, it takes you have to be a special breed of competitor as a team and as an individual to keep signing up for hardship year after year, and all you're doing is trying to do what you did the previous year. And St. Thomas has managed it six years in a row, which, as we were talking about earlier, Paul, is a phenomenal achievement. And they're still there, and it remains to be seen. The jury is out on whether Loughrea have that kind of temperament, to dig in when teams are coming at them 100 miles an hour, wanting to beat them. What are they going to find in those pressure situations? So motivation has changed completely for Loughrea this year, and it'll be interesting to see the level and the quality of display they produce against Clymer Daly on Sunday.
You're obviously just talking there about Thomas's. They play Mike Cullen this weekend at 5:15 in Pearse Stadium in Group One. Just even with their performance in round one, the players they didn't have in particular, Fintan Burke, Keane Mahoney, James Regan, only fit enough to come off the bench. Aina Burke looked really good again, 7 points for him. You just suspect Thomas's to have too much for Michael at the weekend.
Oh God, yeah, I was checking the bookmaker odds and the weekend matches, both in Galway and Tipperary there this morning, and Thomas's, I think from recall, are the hottest favourites in either county. They're 1 to 25 to beat Mike Cullen in Pearse Stadium. And it's just, they will just have too much class. They will just have too much everything for Mike Cullen. They were, they're basically Mike Cullen are just hanging on to their senior A status, and they were well beaten by Athenry eventually in the opening round, notwithstanding that James Bradley scored I think 6 points for them. They will be they'll be gallant and they'll have a crack, but ultimately they'll be out of their depth against the former All Ireland club champions.
It obviously puts, if Thomas is, as you expect, get the win here, puts them in a strong position for this group.
Hmm.
But interestingly, too, if Athenry were to get past Gort, it's going to be a straight shootout for a quarter final between Thomas's and Athenry.
Sorry, Paul, I just missed you there.
I was just saying, if Thomas's and Athenry both get a victory in this group this weekend, it's going to be a straight shootout between Athenry and Thomas's for a place in the last eight. Then
Yeah, yeah, I suppose that's the way it is. But look at, I suppose every club that's in action this weekend, Paul, there's still everything to play for. No team is in relegation trouble yet. No team is in the knockout stages yet. So they're all in no man's land. But I was just, in contrast to the Galway Senior Football Championship, after two rounds of matches, the relegation lineup is almost decided. A lot of the teams have already booked their places in the knockout stages, but the hurling situation is completely different. Now, obviously, the picture will be a lot clearer this weekend, and some teams, if they win second day out, they're obviously straight through to the knockout stages and probably heading directly into the quarterfinals. So it's a very interesting weekend of matches, and even in Senior B there, Connacht Hascrafona repeat their scoring exploits of the Portumna match. I mean, they ran up a ridiculous score. Pádraig Mannion shooting the lights out. They're playing Moylough at the weekend, and they probably should come through that. Portumna were on a retrieval mission against Pierce's. Probably will just maybe fall short. You'd expect them to be a bit more competitive. Lee Mellows should have too much for Tina Aberdeenary, who were probably a bit disappointing in the opening round. And the last game there in Senior B, Kilnadeem Leitrim against Ballinderry, I'd expect Kilnadeem Leitrim to come through there.
just on that final game, John, in the senior championship, Athenry Gort, you're obviously expecting a reaction from Gort, but obviously are going to be without Craig Lally, but
Yeah.
they'll be disappointed. But Athenry's form was impressive too, considering without a player like Jason Rabbit in round one.
Yeah, that's true. I saw Athenry winning the senior hurling B title last year against Portumna and Ballinasloe, and you basically were left under no illusion. This is a club heading back to the top, and they had an emphatic first round win. Like Keane Burke is their key forward in terms of scoring up front. Killian Lawless and Owen Lawless are top class players as well. And as you said, they were missing Jason Rabbit in the opening round. John Hardiman, who led Galway to two minor All Ireland hurling titles, I believe, is still involved in the management setup. So Athenry won't be lacking anything from their back room. And on the other hand, if Athenry are moving in the right direction, Gort are going in the other way. They just they're not the force or anywhere close to what they were. They could even struggle to hold on to their senior A status this year, Paul. They're so dependent on Aidan Hellebert up front for scores. Lally's going to be a huge loss to them, even though he's moving on in years as well. And I think Athenry will target this fixture and they'll add to Gort's troubles.
Just before we finish, John, obviously with the Galway inter-county hurling season, probably disappointing in the end. Already from what we've seen in the club championship games, there's still a lot of young talent out there when you look at the performances in round one. But overall, how would you assess where the Galway senior hurlers are at the minute?
Um, Look, at this year did not go well. The lost, 3 or 4 games by a dozen points between the league and the championship. They, came up short against Kilkenny in the Leinster final. And then, you know, even though Tipperary weren't great in the evening in the Gaelic grounds, Galway never looked like winning that match, and they had a few late chances, all right, of goals. And I think the management were possibly caught between a rock and a hard place. There was still a good handful of players there from Micheál's time when Galway won the All Ireland in 2017. And managers are human. We have loyalties, and I attach no blame to Eamon O'Shea, Micheál Donoghue, Franny Ford, Aidan Hart, Noel Larkin for seeing if the remnants of that 2017 team can still hack it at the highest level. And they saw what they saw in this year. So they were so tied up with Dublin for the previous 2 years, and obviously had knocked Galway out of the championship in Pearse Stadium in 2024. So now they've seen it close up and personal, the form of these players, and we've made the point earlier, Paul, especially at the intercounty level. If you don't have pace and mobility, you're in trouble straight away. So I would imagine the management there will be some sort of a clear out there, and they will largely focus on the young players coming through. And I think Micheál Donoghue and his management will have learned a lot from this season's campaign. And at the end of the day, are Galway any worse off than any other team, bar Tipperary, who won the All Ireland? I mean, look at Limerick, high expectations. Cork, massive expectations. Kilkenny must be sick now, losing two All Ireland semi-finals in a row to Clare and Tipperary. At the end of the day, there's only one All Ireland champions, and that team is Tipperary. So this time last year, Tipperary arguably were in the same hole that Galway are currently in now. And I've been so long around, Paul. I've seen the way teams' fortunes can change drastically almost within a year, never mind from one year to the next. Galway still have a lot of talented players, um, and obviously there'll be a huge dependence on Cathal Mannion again in 2026. But if they could build a bit of momentum early in the season, win a few league matches, discover a bit of new talent, and I think also the fact that when people see Micheál Donoghue standing on the sideline, any player who's in that Galway dressing room, they're looking at a man, the only man who has delivered an All Ireland title to Galway since 1988. And that's a special place to be. And Micheál obviously would have been disappointed to a certain extent how 2025 turned out. But he and his management, Noel Larkin and Franny Ford, laid a platform for Dublin's progress over the last 2 years. Now, I know Dublin bombed out against Cork in the All Ireland semi final, but that victory over Limerick was something else. And it gave us a tantalising glimpse of what Dublin are capable of on a given day. So when spring comes around in a few months' time, Galway will be back in the trenches, the management, the players, their backroom staff. And who knows what's going to happen in 2026? Because up to, you could say a month before the All Ireland final, if somebody said that Tipperary would end up bringing the McCarthy Cup home to Thurles, she'd be laughed at. So
Yeah.
nothing surprises me anymore. I wouldn't be writing off Galway at all in 2026. But they're going to have to shake up the squad. They're going to have to get a bit of momentum going early in the season, build up a bit of belief in their ranks. And Kilkenny will be going for a seven in a row in Leinster next year. And I think that obviously Galway are probably their main threat. Dublin obviously seem to be coming with a decent team, and they mightn't like it, but they may take some inspiration from Tipperary's trials and tribulations over the past 18 months, where they went from not able to win a match in Munster to becoming All Ireland champions. So without hope, you have nothing, Paul. So
Exactly.
as somebody who has been heavily involved in Galway hurling for over 45, almost 45 years as a commentator and as a club manager and whatever, it's just that you can never give up. And now it is significant. I came across a stat there the other day that since Galway reached their first All Ireland final in the modern era in 1975, that this is the longest break the county has had since appearing in an All-Ireland final since then. So Galway haven't been in an All-Ireland final since 2018. That's 7 years ago. And we've seen it with the county over the years that they can produce a team. I'm not saying almost from nowhere, but they are capable of being serious contenders again next year. It's just that um, the management are going to have to heed the lessons from this year. Some of it didn't come as a surprise to me what those matches showed up. But ultimately, Galway are still one of the leading hurling counties in the country. And if they get a few breaks along the way in 2026, who knows where they might end up.
In part two of the show, we're looking ahead at the Senior B Hurling Championship and the Intermediate Hurling Championship. I'm joined by Skehana Mountbellew Moylough manager Dessie O'Brien. Dessie, it's fairly interesting even looking at the Senior B this weekend. If you look at Group 1, for instance, you have Lee Mellows and Tina Aberdeen, both teams who lost their opening round games.
Yeah, Group 1, it's loser versus loser in the first round and winner versus winner. Like, so, like, whoever wins the Kilnadima Ballinderring game are in a serious position, aren't they? That's going to be a tight one, really. It's hard to call that one. Kilnadima leads them, put up a serious score against Tina. Look very fast, look very fit. Ballinderring's, 116, I think, the first day against Mellows. You know, it's a 17 points or something like that. Yeah, it's a hard group to call, that one, isn't it? Because I think that's going to go down to the last day to see who comes out, you know?
It's big, isn't it, for Mellows, because probably people have predicted Mellows to sort of push on at this Senior B, and they haven't been able to get to a final since this grade came in. And Teen Aberdeen as well, going all the way to the Intermediate All Ireland last year. People expected, I suppose, Teen Aberdeen to push on at this level too.
They probably did, but look, I'll be honest with you. When I was with Climber and we won the Intermediate and went up to Senior B, we got an opener too. Like, we came. You know, I think we won one game that year in the championship and ended up going back down to Intermediate. Like, that step up, people don't realise that from Intermediate just to Senior B is a serious step up. Like, you know, you have to have everything going right for you. You have to have all your injuries cleared. You know, it's a big step up for any team. And Tina now, seeing that they had a great run last year, they were probably by far the best team in the Intermediate Championship last year, and probably unlucky not to win in All Ireland that time. But yeah. They took a big hit now, losing the Kilnadima Leitrim in the first game, didn't they?
Just on that, Dessie, what do you think is the biggest step up? Is it the hurling, or what's the big step up? Or is it consistently, I suppose, coming up against a higher standard of team more often when it comes to Senior B?
Yeah, see, just like everything else, and I think even at the underage structure, the lower the grade you're playing, the slower the hurling is. And when you come up against the A teams or the big clubs, we call them, you know, that are used to playing in the A competitions at minor and under 16, they're playing Senior B for the last couple of years or just out of Senior A, maybe a lot of them. They know what it takes. They know how hard it is to stay there. And they also, they just have that extra bit of speed in you. I think it's the speed. I just think it's the speed for making that step up, you know?
If you're looking at Mellows and Tina Aberdeen, who are you predicting to come out on top of this one at the weekend?
I think knowing Matty and his crew behind him, I think they'll have the boys ready for this one, you know? I think they'll have the boys ready for this one. I'd be surprised if they didn't. You know, Mellows won't go down now either, but Davy Collins will have them ready. But I just think Tina might have enough for them, you know?
It really does put the pressure of this. Whoever loses this, it puts them under pressure now. They're not mathematically out. Obviously, you have three teams coming out of a group, but the loser of this to go in to the next round on 0 points, it puts them under massive pressure.
Oh, it does. I think this is a big week for every club in every grade, really, because especially the teams that have lost already, and if you lose again, like, the last thing you want is a dogfight on your last day, and you know, it depends who you're playing then or what way the group is. Like, you could be looking for a scoring difference, you could be looking for something else. The pressure on the last day is massive. You know, if you can at all, this is the weekend to make the move, put yourself into the the best position possible, and then go on, you know.
Just looking at the other game on Sunday, Kilnadima, Ballindoreen, it's in Kilbecanty at 1:30. Winner of this, then almost, well, they're going to be guaranteed knockout hurling, but they're going a long way to being in the semi-final of the Senior B Hurling Championship.
Yeah, like and look at. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know much about the Ballindoreen team except they've been very, very consistent over the last couple of years, and they've been thereabouts all the time, haven't they? But the Kilnadima Leitrim team seem to be really pushing on this year. I suppose the Moylough factor, that like even from the Galway setup, like he seems to be pushing on. I don't know what he scored the last day. I know it was a big score, but he was very, he was probably their most threatened forward. But they're balanced over the team. Jack Kinney, these guys have been around now. They're all under 27, 28, like, so they know what it takes. They've been in minor A finals, minor or under 20 finals, under 21 finals. They know what it takes now, Kilnadima, and I think it's nearly time for them to make the break now, you know. So I do think probably Kilnadima leads them in this one, you know.
Are Kilnadima a team that you think can go all the way this year?
Well, I know it's only the first game against Tina, like, and I know it was a neighbouring battle. Look, it's not to stop them going all the way, is there? They really can go all the way, can't they?
Yeah. Just on your
they're a good young team.
Just even on your point there about Ballindoreen, they've consistently performed at this level, and even after coming up from intermediate last year, performed excellently. But they've lost players too, like Niall Conan and these players going, but they're still consistently performing. Big win against Mellows, and there's no reason why they couldn't upset the Cards again this weekend.
Which is no, like they had a great win against Mellows, and that'll definitely lift them. As you said yourself there, like they're consistent. They're a very consistent team, and they have been for over the last few years. Yeah, it'll be an intriguing battle. I suppose if you're going to Paddy Power or Boyle Sports, you'd be kind of saying draw on this one is whatever price is, you know.
Looking at Group 2 then, Dessie, Saturday, 4:15, in Duggan Park, Portumna, Port Pierce's. I think people are fascinated to see what sort of reaction is going to come from Portumna at the weekend. Obviously, conceding 136 would have really hurt them against the Haskell Frohana in the first game.
Yeah, 136 was some score by a Haskell, wasn't it? You know, the Minions were probably instrumental in most of that. Look at Portumna, to be fair to Portumna, I suppose, if you want to, they're trying to stay in Senior B. They have a good lot of young fellas coming through at underage level. And I suppose if you're talking to anyone in Portumna, they're probably their goal would be to stay in Senior B until these young fellas come through and then make a push again. Haskell under Brian Mahoney and the guys there, like in fairness, 136 is impressive scoring in any competition, and it was just impressive, I suppose. Yeah, massive score, you know.
Looking at Pierce's big win for them, then 316 to 119 against Moylough in the last round. Killian Fahey with 1-5 there for them. Dean Riley and Joanna Donlan, 2 points each. Emmett Ward with 2 goals. They're really beginning to push on now. Pierce's like that's a huge win for them against Moylough in the opening round. Obviously coming up against Portumna now this weekend.
Yeah, sure. Pierce's. You ask anyone in Galway, like Pierce's are a team you never want to play really, because they just die with that jersey on them, don't they? They're just brilliant. Their attitude, everything, like they're producing county underage players at all levels. You have to admire the club. Like they just seem to push on with everything they have, and they use every resource available to them. Again, a huge win against Moylough. Did I predict it? Possibly not. But then with Moylough missing Davy and Young Dolphin, you know, probably 2 big losses for them. And at Senior B grade or any grade in rural clubs, Pierce's or Moylough or anyone else, you can't be affording to have these injuries, you know. just can't afford to have these injuries. And when you do, you're down, and that's it. The backup isn't there as what the bigger clubs have.
How would you call Pierce's and Portumna this weekend?
Well, on form, I'd go with Pierce's. Yeah, on form, I'd go with Pierce's. And that's just on form, though. Look at, as I said, when you get the two of them into the Duggan Park on Saturday, both of them will be dying for the win. Pierce's, knowing that a win will probably get them to the quarterfinals. Portumna need a win just to keep going and bring it down to the last game. Yeah, but I still say Pierce's probably by 3 or 4 points.
That'd be huge if Pierce's were to overturn Portumna. Obviously, Portumna are looking to react as well after going so close last year in the Senior B final too.
Yeah, it was like you're when you have Portumna there, like I go back to it, like they have a lot of youth mixed in now with the older guys, and like Joe is still pulling along there with Portumna, like a huge asset to any club. But like probably the rest of the players have to stand up now. I don't think Dolphin was playing. Martin Dolphin wasn't playing the last day either,
Martin
was
Dolphin's actually
he?
retired.
Yeah, is he retired?
Yeah,
He is.
he retired. Yeah.
I still wouldn't be surprised. See, when you're dealt that blow, the likes of them lads retired and then going, it's very hard to replace these guys, It's very hard to replace these guys. So, look at, as I said, there are a lot of underage coming, so if they can just hang on for a couple of years and keep the club where it is, you don't know what's happening going forward.
Just looking at the final game in Senior B before we look at the intermediate, Moylough, a Haskell 4-1, 4:30. Obviously going to be a bit of pressure on a Haskell coming into this one. Obviously scoring 136. They drew a lot of the headlines in round one, but a repeat two of the cracking Senior B final we had between Moylough and a Haskell 4-1 a few years ago too.
Yeah, sure, that was a great game that day, wasn't it? Haskell have turned things around this year again. 136 the last day, very impressive. But now saying that, Moylough scored 119, which would probably, if you look at the rest of the scores, it was as good as any of the rest of the Senior B score lines, So will it be a shootout? I don't know. Has Moylough someone that'll take on the two Manions? Well, Jerry and the guys there are just going to have their homework done, because it's a serious ask. 136 is very impressive the last day, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and even you look at the spread of scores, Carl Mannion 17 points, Luke Kennedy 1-3, Sean Blaheen, Mark Kelly, Luke Murray point each, Robert Green 5 points, Dermot O'Brien 2 points. There was a terrific spread of scores scoring that 136.
Yeah, you mentioned there Sean Blaheen back as well.
Yeah,
I don't think they had him last year. It's huge. And again, a rural club, every player back is a bonus. And he's a big bonus for Haskell 4-1, huge bonus.
Just on Moylough, like different team if you get Davy Glennon and Connor Dolphin back into this team.
Oh, they are, yeah. And I don't know how far they are away now or what's their situation. I know that young Dolphin came on an under-20 game last week.
You imagine they both came on against Pierce's in the first round, so you imagine they're pretty close this weekend now.
You would, yeah. And as I said, young Dolphin came on against, I think it was Ardrahan in a under-20 quarter-final the other night. Came on and played the second half, and I think he nearly pulled it out of the fire from now, the last by a point. But yeah, look at Moylough need Conor Dolphin, and they need David Glennon and Ronnie Glennon and Sean Hardiman and these guys. They need all these guys, on fire. Shawnee O'Brien. But, it's a big ask. It's a big ask. They're again, they won't want to lose 2 in a row now. Moylough,
How do you see this one going?
How do I see this one going? I suppose Moylough with Davy and Connor possibly back. We'll put up a bigger challenge, 136. I'd go to Haskell in this one. I would, yeah. I'd go to Haskell in this one now. Just by the bare minimum But as I said, Moylough need the boys back. They really need everyone firing.
When it comes to the Intermediate Championship Group 1, I don't think we need to ask you for your prediction there. I think you're going to tell us who's going to win there. But your own side, Skehana, Mountbellew, Moylough, up against Mealy-Gaircourt. You must be
Yeah,
happy enough, Dessie, with the way things are going. Like, you came through a real battle there against Ceylon in round 1.
yeah, that was a battle, like, and that's what it was a battle blowing through 'em, like. Both teams went at it like dogs, to be honest. I don't think there was maybe one or two incidents where the referee had to get involved, but it was just a pure, hard-fought, honest game of hurling. Two teams that just wanted to win, probably two teams that needed to win because we knew we have Aircourt coming down the line. The both of us have, who are probably, let's call a spade a spade. They're probably ahead of all of us in that group at the moment, they're more experienced. In the last 3 semi-finals, 4 semi-finals, in a county final a couple of years ago. Yeah, we probably both knew going into that game we needed to win, both teams, and lucky enough it was us that came out on top of it.
You're expecting a big one on Saturday in Duggan Park?
I am, yeah, of course I am, yeah, sure. I know all the Aircourt lads, and I think with 4 years with Clymer, and we played them, I think, every year bar one. And we played them twice one year, which we know all about each other. And at the end of the day, we'll shake hands at the end of the game and we'll move to the third match. That's all you can do,
Yeah, they had an impressive win too over Athenry in round 1,
Absolutely.
Mealy-Gaircourt there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I will look at Mealy-Gaircourt and not try to blow them up here or nothing, because it's easy to know, it's easy to see. They have class hurlers around the place. And I did tell you, you asked me a couple of months ago on another podcast, who do I think should be on a Galway team, and I said John Fleming. I still stand by that. I still think he's one of the best hurlers in the Intermediate Championship. Probably unfairly that he wasn't playing against Tip in the senior this year. Yeah, look, Mealy-Gaircourt are a serious team, and they had a great win against Athenry. I was expecting a bit more from Athenry, to be honest. I know they probably lost players to the senior ranks, but it's there to be won now.
Would you expect Ceylon to get things back on track this weekend against Athenry in Tuam on Sunday?
Would you look at Ceylon are a serious outfit too. I'll have the eight in a row, quarter-finals, 2 semi-finals, something like that in the Intermediate Championship. They know what it's like. They know what a dogfight comes down to, and they won't want to be going into an Aircourt game with no win, in the last game. So yeah, I think Ceylon will bounce back this weekend, yeah, without a doubt. No, I know they had a red card against us, and he's probably missing that game. But they have backup. They have a good team. They have a great management team. Yeah, I think they'll be fine. Yeah, I think Ceylon will beat Athenry. Yeah.
Isn't there a huge amount at stake in this group in particular, because you have yourselves, Ceylon and Mealy-Gaircourt all battling for a Premier Intermediate status before you even nearly think of the latter stages of the championship?
Well, I think that's why our game, the first game of the championship in our group, was ourselves and Ceylon. I think that was more pressure to win that game because of the status to Senior B or Intermediate, Premier Intermediate, whatever they're calling it next year, rather than getting out of the group. I think that was the biggest pressure. And I think the players felt that now too. It's a big thing for both clubs. It's a big thing for every club, but when you have 2 rural clubs like what we have, it's a big thing,
Looking at Group 2 then, Dessie, Sunday in Tuam at 12 o'clock, Abbey-Knockmoy, Carnmore. Carnmore had an impressive victory over Clymer in round 1. Abbey-Knockmoy coming up short against Craughwell in round 1.
Yeah, I thought Abbey-Knockmoy would have enough for Craughwell in the first day, but then saying that, when I think back, when I was with Clymer last year, we struggled in the preliminary quarter final to beat Craughwell. We probably shouldn't have beaten Craughwell that day. They have a fair young outfit and mixed with a few elder guys, and yeah, I was a bit disappointed with that now, because I thought Abbey-Knockmoy, would have given that one good lash. But look, they can still come out of the group. They can still get into the Premier Intermediate. There's nothing to stop them. Crowell on the other hand, like, just shows the work that's been done in the Crowell club when you see that they're fielding two strong teams in senior and intermediate,
Karen Moore, obviously, who Abbey are coming up against this weekend, they do already seem like they could top this group.
Yeah, Carnmore is a serious outfit. I'd actually be tipping Carnmore probably to be in the top 2, 3 in the intermediate championship this year myself. Hanging around there again for the last couple of years. Beat Kilimer last year handy enough in the semi final. I know the scoreline mightn't be that good, but they were on top of us most of the time last year. But Cardmore is a serious outfit now. They're banging on the door for a while, and I'd say they're probably sick of hearing about this minor team that won it a couple of years ago, and they're coming. Like, you just have to grab the bull by the horns and just get onto it, and they have to come soon,
Your former club then, Clymer, coming up against Crowell, obviously difficult defeat for them in round one, but chance to get things back on track this weekend.
Yeah, look at Clymer. Clymer will, the boys, Aidan Ryan and the boys will have all that sorted. Probably disappointed with the performance against Karen Moore the first day. 14 points, probably not good enough to get them anywhere really. You'd want to be banging the 21, 22 plus points to be there. Yeah, Crowell now will probably have a little bit of a grudge after last year, with them, like Crowell, as I said, probably should have beaten Clymer last year in the preliminary quarter final. A dirty old wet night blowing Ballinasloe. You'll have two clubs now that'll go at each other in this one, I just think maybe Clymer will have enough for them, and they'll be probably a bit cuter,
Looking at Group 3 then, Dessie, on Saturday, Clarenbridge, Annadown, 3:30. I think realistically, if you're looking at this group and you consider Ballygare and Kinvara, the other two teams, like Clarenbridge and Annadown, unfortunately, are going to struggle in this group. But it's a chance now for Clarenbridge and Annadown to get a victory on the board.
Yeah, sure. One of them, yeah, Kinvara. The Kinvara seem to be very impressive, especially with Connor back. Kinvara seem to be impressive. They played after us in True Stadium that day now, and I watched a bit of it. Very impressive. Saying that, Annadown that day scored 2-11, I think, against them. Something like that. With like 4:23 is an impressive score as well in intermediate hurling, and they really had it put to bed early, Yeah, Kinvara look impressive in that group now. But then saying that, Ballygare doing serious work.
Yeah,
serious
6-19 against Clarenbridge.
6-19 against Clarenbridge, second team, which a lot of people were saying wouldn't be a bad team this year, and they'll be pushing that group. But I don't think anyone's seen 6-19 coming from Ballygare. But Ballygare have been pushing there now for the last couple of years. I think they're in Division 1 now. I think they got beaten Division 2 final this year.
Yeah,
and
but
they're up in
still
Division 1
promoted.
now.
Yeah,
They're still got promoted, and they're up with the senior A teams now next year, most of them, and that's only going to do good for them. 6-19 was a serious score, though, isn't it?
yeah, some
To
scoring.
be, as a manager team, you've kind of
Probably
scratched your head.
when you're looking at Kinvara and Ballygare, it probably is the game of the weekend, and people probably have Ballygare and Kinvara as 1 and 2 at the minute, going on current form in New Inn on Sunday. It's going to be some game there, and it's going to be interesting to see after where both sides are at.
Well, I suppose that's what you'll get out of it now. You're going to see
Yeah.
where they are,
Yeah.
and both management teams will probably be looking at this and going, yeah, we'll know where we are, and what we have to do for the last game, really. And then look at they're probably in the driving seat now with both of them clubs. This will probably be the one to decide, who goes top, really.
Yeah.
But like you'd probably see them coming up 1 and 2 in the group anyway. You should anyway,
Yeah. The
Which way it would be, I don't know.
Clarenbridge and a down game just is really deciding who's getting into the preliminary quarterfinal. Obviously, whoever finishes bottom, the year is done because there's no relegation. They'll just be automatically gone to junior. And anyways, Clarenbridge can't play in the Premier Intermediate, so they'll be gone into a separate competition next year then.
They will, but Clarenbridge can still play in the preliminary quarterfinals, can't they?
They could, yeah, that's what I mean. So
So
that
yeah,
it's basically Anna Down and Clarenbridge going for that preliminary quarterfinal last
that's right.
spot.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah, because I still think that the other two, Kinvara and Ballygare, will be 1 and 2, whichever way it'll be. I
Yeah.
don't know. You'll know that after Sunday or Saturday, whenever they're playing. But it's great to see the two of them battling it out now. It'll be a good match. It'll be a good intermediate match. You know.
For sure, yeah, one of the games of the weekend.
Oh, without doubt.
Just finally, then, Dessie, Intermediate Hurling Championship Group 4, Rahoon, Newcastle, Kilbacon, Rahoon obviously drew with Turlock Moore, and Bertie came with a big performance there, scoring 2-7 for them, and Kilbacon came up short then against Beha in round 1.
Yeah, Turlock's second team. So we all know what Turlock have. Like Turlock can produce it any day. Like 20 points against Rahoon 3. I think Rahoon were 3-11, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. Yeah, something like that. Like 20 points, a big score. They have lively forwards. They have a lot of young guys, I suppose. Probably trying out new lads that's not ready for senior yet, or getting them ready for senior. Will they lose many more to the senior team? I don't know. I actually don't know. Possibly could now, possibly could. So yeah, they have Beha next, isn't it? Isn't that who they have? Turlock and
Uh,
Beha?
Turlock and Beha, yeah, that's on Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be some match. I'm sure again that's a kind of a like if Beha win that, won't they be kind of guaranteed to Premier Intermediate, really?
Yeah, yeah, because Turlock can't get it. They'd be
Turlock
on
can't go
3 points.
there. Yeah, I think Rahoon will probably have enough for Kilbacon,
If
you
Turlock,
know.
if Turlock and Rahoon win, they'll be the Premier Intermediate teams because Kilbacon will be on 0 points, can't get to
That's
them,
right.
and
Yeah,
Turlock obviously can't compete in it given they're a second team. So
that's right. Yeah.
big
So it's a
weekend
big
for
weekend
Rahoon
for
and
both of them.
Beha.
Yeah, it's a big weekend for both clubs, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
huge day.
it's huge. But yeah, you'd be expecting the two of them. You're probably expecting Rahoon and Beha to win anyway. Yeah.
Just then on the fixtures, just in the Junior A Championship, Loughrea they play Ballindreen at 7 o'clock on Friday evening in Loughrea, and then Micheál Brannocks they play St Thomas's on Sunday in Micheál Brannocks, and Salthill Knocknacarra and play Lee Mellows at 3 o'clock in Salthill. The way that table stands at the minute is Lee Mellows top of the table on 6 points, Loughrea in second on 5, Thomas's in third place on 5, Micheál Brannocks, they're still in contention, in fourth place on 4 points. Ballindreen, they're in fifth place on 2 points, and Sawtill Knocknacarra, they're on 4 games played, 2 points, and
2 points.
yeah, all teams there have played 4 games, so they're going into their fifth game this weekend. Then just in the Junior A Group 2. So it's Ballinasloe and Sarsfields at 7 o'clock in Ballinasloe on Friday evening. Bern and Ferbica, they play Ormore Mary at 7 o'clock on Friday evening. And Captagal, they play Castlegare at 7 o'clock on Friday evening. The way that table stands at the minute is Sarsfields, they're 4 from 4 on 8 points. Then it's Captagal in second place on 4 points. Ormore Mary in third place on 4 points. Ballinasloe, they're in fourth place on 3 points. Castlegare then they're in fifth place on 3 points, and Barner and Ferbica they sit bottom of the table there on 2 points. And then just finally in Group 3 of the Junior Championship, Tina Aberdeenry play Ardrahan at 7 o'clock Friday evening. Kiltormer they play Clymer at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, and Spittle play Mealich Aircourt then on Sunday. And the way that table sits at the minute is Kiltormer have 4 from 4 on 8 points. Ardrahan they're in second place on 6 points. Teen Aberdeenry in third place on 6 points. Spittle they're in fourth place on 2 points. Clymer on 2 points. And Mealich Aircourt sitting bottom there on 0 points. Desi, obviously it's the Junior A Championship and it doesn't make massive difference, I suppose, because they can't be a intermediate club next year. They'll still be in junior, unfortunately for them. But positive to see Kiltormer there already making an impressive start to the junior, considering what happened last year and getting relegated in Everton 4 from 4 in the junior championship.
Yeah, look at, and I think that puts them with a home match, if I'm right, in the quarter final. Now, if Kiltormer get out and play any team in Kiltormer, and the crowd get behind them in a quarter final, well, then they're only one step away from winning that Junior A. Yeah,
They'll
look at,
fancy the junior one too. Like obviously
without a doubt, yeah,
you can go on a run there too as well.
without a doubt, you'll fancy it because Mike Ryan's training them in a good backroom team. Look at, we all know that, especially Kiltormer were hit terrible by immigration and different things and retirements and all that, and no one wants to see a club like Kiltormer who as young fellas we all followed and watched them playing All Irelands and winning county finals for East Galway and that, and you hate to see them down where they are. Like, but look at, I know these guys, and look at, they'll fight their way back. They will, and I think they're on the way back. I think they are. I actually think that they'll have a good shot at this. Yeah.
Great stuff, Dessie. That's all we do have time for on today's show. Again, Dessie, thanks very much for coming on.
No problem, Paul.